Hello everyone and welcome to Whispers from the Other Side. This is a special show hosted by Karen Miranda, who from a very early age realized that she had a special gift. Okay, this gift allowed her to communicate with people who have passed on to the other life. She's going to tell us a little bit about how she realized she had this gift and what kinds of things she is able to do as a result of this gift. Karen is considered to be a clairsentient medium, and she's going to tell us what that means. Tell us a little bit about what this means and how you got started.
How I got started, first of all, I want to say hello to everybody. Welcome to Whispers from the Other Side. I got started a long time ago when I was really little, not being aware of what was going on with me at the time, because when you're a child, you don't know. You just feel like you have your make-believe friends that are around you, because I felt like I was never alone, and I always felt presence of people around me, and sometimes I would get a touch, and I just would look back and there would be nobody there. And when I made my Holy Communion, when I was, I guess, 6 or 7, when you make your first Holy Communion, when I was at the services, a nun leaned over and she said, "There's something about you, there's something very special." But I didn't think anything of it. Being a kid, and you're thinking of going through the communion process and you're partying and being with your relatives after. I just fluffed it off as an old nun, saying something like that to me. And of course my mom remembers that today from years ago. And later on, when I was about 12 years old, I was at my Uncle Nicky's wake, and my 3 aunts were over in the corner crying, and I'm like looking over, paid my respects, and then went over to give my condolences, and I looked at my 3 aunts, and I said, "Why are you crying?" And they said, "I'm crying because, your uncle's died." I said, "Well, he's not in pain anymore." And being 12, I didn't know how he passed. I said, his chest isn't sore anymore, and he can breathe a lot better. And they looked at me, and I said he wasn't in pain. And they looked at me, and they all were quiet, and they stopped crying. They felt a lot better. And then they told me that he passed away from a heart attack behind the wheel of a car. So I said, okay. And just, again, being a child, almost a teenager, you don't think of those kind of things, so I just shifted it off more until I got older. When I got older, when I was 39, I just gave birth to my 3rd child. 6 months later, I got diagnosed with having multiple sclerosis. When I was 39, I just gave birth to my 3rd child. 6 months later, I got diagnosed with having multiple sclerosis. I went to the hospital, and when I was in the hospital, I went in for the MRI testing. And when I went for the MRI testing, of course, you know how loud people have had MRIs done before, how loud it is inside an MRI room. All of a sudden I heard, stick with me, kid." My uncle's voice, and I'm like, okay, I'm seeing stuff, I'm hearing stuff, things, and I don't know who's around me. And I knew it was my uncle's voice, trying to be in denial a little bit, because I'm like, okay, now I'm really, off my rocker. So after the testing was done, I went back to my mother's house, and I said to her, "Mom, did Uncle Charlie ever say, 'Stick with me, kid'?" And she looked at me with this look on her face, and she said, "Yes, I did. He did. He did it. Used to say that when we were little growing up. There were 8 of them in the family that all together." And I said, "Okay." And as she got talking, she says, "Don't tell me anymore," because I was freaking her out. But I was a little bit nervous myself, because I'm hearing things from people that are dead, and you really didn't talk about things back then. It's way more open now than it was back, 13 years ago, which is a good thing. So after that, I never said anything to my mother again. And it would be even years later, like when things were starting to happen, I would have to call my aunt now, who was in spirit on the other side. I would call her up and I'd say, well, you know, was anybody gifted in the family? And of course, way back in the 70s, you really didn't talk about such things. She said, yes, there was. And I said, oh, really? She said, your grandmother was gifted, but she had the psychic end of it. I will probably never know till this day if she had seeing the deceased loved ones who have crossed over. I'll never know. But as far as I know, she had the psychic end of it, and she was a very religious.
So when you say psychic, you mean you can understand what other people are feeling or thinking,
First,
but you can't necessarily communicate with dead
you
people.
can't communicate. A difference between a psychic and a medium is a psychic predicts past, present, and future events. And sometimes they'll use cards or they'll use a piece of jewelry you own, which is called psychometry. They'll do that, and they don't see the people that have passed away. A medium is somebody who delivers messages from your friends, families, and deceased loved ones who have crossed over. That's the difference between the two. And my grandmother had more the other end of it. So I said, okay, and I was very happy, for the piece of information that she had given me about my grandmother, because when my grandmother was dying, she did see them. She was, and my aunt thought it was a wishful woman's thinking of her wishes to see everybody again. And then she was saying names of deceased loved ones that have crossed over. Oh, there's my Aunt Tess, there's Uncle Don, and her husband that passed away. They were all in the womb, so my aunt just thought it was a wishful woman's, wishes to see these people when they really were in the room with her. And then she just, went off and crossed over to the higher side of life. And that's when I said, okay, it's time for me to write a book.
Mm-hmm. Did you consult anybody about your gift? Did
Yes.
you study it?
Yes, I did study it. At first I consulted a very close priest friend of the family's, because my own parish priest thought I was, which I was beginning to wonder too, because I was singing in the choir at the time, and a couple of people in my choir were getting messages from their loved ones, which it's not about me, because it really is a gift. And I'm just a messenger between the veils.
So you were getting messages from the loved ones of members of the choir that had passed on.
That had passed on. So I tried to talk to my choir priest, but my parish priest, but he thought, okay, I'm really out there, okay? And so I said, you know what, I'm going to talk to a friend of mine who's been there through thick and thin, who was a real priest. And when he came to visit one time, he said, Karen, can I speak to you? So we went up to the pool in Maine. I said, okay. And we sat down and gave him a little mini reading. He says, there's nothing wrong with you. That's a gift to share with others. And it made me feel a lot better, because my own priest just kind of made me feel a little bit like, okay, there's something, there's something wrong with me. So he really he said, that's a gift, you got to pursue it more. So I said, okay. Then I said, okay, I got this gift. Now I got to figure out how to pursue it. When I met somebody at a bookstore in Braintree, and they said, I know a place you can go. And I said, okay. They said, there's a spiritualist church in Quincy. And I've heard about it on and off, but being brought up Italian, Roman Catholic, I was like, okay, that stuff, being brought up the way I was brought up. But finally I said, I got to do something. Because I was trying to control the spirits, but I couldn't control the spirits, because, you got to do life stuff too. But I was led to the First Spiritualist Church of Quincy, which I was very fortunate to have two very good teachers, and it's nice to know there is help out there for you, which is I'm very thankful for that, because they helped me how to learn and control and how to ground myself when I'm doing the work, and just, that it's okay to have these gifts. And that made me feel so much better.
Were they also mediums?
They were also mediums, and it was also nice at that particular time to know, hey, I'm not alone. There's other people like me. Just everybody's gifted in their own way. And I feel like everybody is gifted. It just depends on how open someone is to what level a person's at. And
how long ago was this that you went to the first spiritualist church?
this was, oh God, this is about 10 years ago.
Okay.
That I entered there, and you know, it was nice being in it's what we call a development circle, where there's other people like myself learning how to control and use their gifts. And it was nice because we could all share, we could all give messages from our loved ones, and it helped me to learn, you know, and also learn, hey, it isn't about me, you know, it's a real gift. And it made me feel, but the part that made me feel really good about the gift of spirit communication is I wasn't alone. And it's a gift to share, you know, for others, from their loved ones who have crossed over to the other side.
So after you started paying more attention to this gift of yours, did you receive visits from people that had passed on to the other side?
People have asked me, do I see my own families and friends? I never see my own families and friends, and I know it's not about me. And so, but some other mediums might, but I see other deceased loved ones from, you know, that belong to other people. Once in a while I can draw one out, and sometimes it will be validated, but I don't really have the gift that way. But one time, long time about, this is going back a little ways, but I was in my bedroom, and about 3 in the morning, which is spirit time, believe it or not, they like to wake people up out of sleep. I woke up and I saw this little girl, and she was asleep, and I'm like, wow, she's sleeping, but I'm looking at her outfit. I'm looking at her, and she's not in normal clothes. She had a long white gown on and the white beanie hat on, like from the 1800s, and I said, oh, that's really cool. And I said a little prayer for her, because I always pray for them all the time and always thank them. And I said some prayers for her, and I'm like, gee, I wonder about her. And I'm saying, my daughter came home from high school, and she said, Ma, what's the matter? I said, you know you're open and I could talk to you about this, but I'd seen a little girl last night in my bedroom about 3 in the morning with an old-fashioned nightgown and a beanie and the old-fashioned cap that they used to wear. I don't know what it's called, but I call it a nightcap. She said, and she wasn't from this time frame at all. I said, well, I'm going to go take a walk. And like, where are you going? We live up the street from a St. Mary's Cemetery. And of course, I said I would never move near one. But now, guess what? I live near one. And so she went up there and she came home. She goes, Mom, I looked all over. She was gone for a pretty good length of time too. She came home and said, Mom, I was up there. There's only one grave with this little girl, and she died in the 1800s. We both just looked at each other. Another friend of mine who was a good medium said, she's not buried by herself. I mean, she's buried by herself. She's not in rows like they usually put people, but she's like alone. So when Melissa and I went up there, she was her grave. There were other graves around her and everything, but she wasn't in those rows. And she was and she was from the 1800s. She only lived to be a year old. But come to find out, back in the day, in the 1800s, they would put them in a nightgown and a cap to make it look like they were sleeping, which was nice, because then, you know, it was nice that back then that's how they did things. So my daughter told me that from learning it in history in school. So it was nice because she kind of gave me a little bit of history 101, I would say, you know. So it was really good, but it was good to know, and it was the only one up there from that time frame that we found. That was that she found for me from the 1800s.
And we'll take a visit to the grave
Okay.
in a few minutes.
All right. This is the grave of Florence, the little girl that I was talking about earlier, that died almost 100 years ago in 1887, and she only lived to be almost a year old. She crossed over to the higher side of life in 1888. where I believe that this was a little girl that came to me and visited me in the bedroom one night just for a visitation to let us know I'm here and we're okay.
Tell us how your gift works. Do you see images? Do you see silhouettes? Do you see people?
Okay.
And do you also hear their voice?
I see it's different every time. That's when I really had to learn to accept what was going on with me. I see people's faces. I see the silhouettes. I also see how they passed over, which sometimes when I see black with them, it's cancer, or if I see red, it's a heart issue or a heart attack. Sometimes they'll show me stuff they owned, and which is really special because, you know, like say something's pretty, if your mom's ring, you had a special ring of your mom's, I'll see that. Sometimes they work different with me every time. There's another way I do see them too. It's called transfiguration, which is when the spirit takes an impression on the person that I'm sitting with in the room, where they'll like walk through the person. And that's another way I'll see them. Like I said, and the clairsentience, which is I feel the presence of the spirit around me, or like I feel like someone's tapping me on the shoulder. The clairsentience end of it is when I take on their personalities, which can be very interesting sometimes too if you're a clairsentience medium, if anyone out there has the gift that way, because it's kind of fun too, because they you'll take on their personalities, and it's awesome because then you know it's not you, you know, that's delivering the messages. And like I said, it's not about me or anything, but the clairsentience part is really, really, you know, kind of fun. But that's how they'll, you know, show me and communicate with me, and then I'll ask them, okay, and what's the message, you know, that you have for me to give the loved one if they're open to it, that's still on this side of the veil.
Mm-hmm. And so you have your TV show now?
Yes, I do.
And what's the name of the TV show?
It's called Whispers from the Other Side.
Okay, and how long have you been doing it?
I've just been doing it for the last 6 months.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And how does the TV show work? People call in?
People call in, and I have a guest on, which is really nice, and I'll, you know, the guest will get to talk about their experiences, or I'll do a reading for a guest when they come on, and then in between, like the talking with the guest, the phone will ring, and then I'll, you know, talk about, you know, who's around them. I say, are you ready for your spirit reading? And they're always happy to hear from their loved one. Sometimes they get more excited. They want to give information, but I tell them not to give me any information because that's feeding the medium information. So, and that's how the show got started.
Hmm. And you get a lot of calls, I understand.
Yes.
On your show, and now you, because of the fact that so many people watch it, you are now recognized in supermarkets and wherever you go around town.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes, that is correct. I go to Stop and Shop, and then we believe one night we actually went up to the store around the corner. My husband needed some ice, and some lady was behind the cash register. She said, "You," and she recognized me from the show. And my husband's kind of shy about such things, so he kind of walks away, and that'll happen. And she said, "That wasn't her pupper on TV. You were saying, you know, about pupper." And the lady didn't recognize it, but she understood I ended up giving her a message, and she understood all the information was validated through her. And she said, "I was arguing with the TV set." So she was at home, you know, arguing with it. I said, "You should have called up, you know." But that's how, yeah, even restaurants, like they'll, you know, once in a while somebody will stop me in a restaurant when I'm out in public too. But I just like try not to get into like the me, or the I part of it. It's not about that.
Mm-hmm. But it sounds like you didn't really want to receive this gift, and it took you almost a half a lifetime to realize that you have this gift, and now you're sharing some of this gift with people who wish to communicate with their loved ones who may have passed on.
Yes, because when this gift first started, it took me a very, very long time that, you know, okay, this is not normal. I couldn't have a normal gift to like be a plumber or carpenter or some, you know, just some normal sense of reality. But I had to really accept it, like you said, you know, it took half a lifetime to really, you know, accept it. And my book that I had written, it's in that, you know, about the stories and,
A
you
lot
know,
of
the
the
things.
stories that you've just told us is in your book?
It's in my book, and some of the stories that I have are in here. You know, people have given me, you know, of course, permission, you know, to talk about, because you got to remember, doing this, you're dealing with human feelings that are still on this side of the veil, because grief is different for everybody, you know, at different levels. So, you know, that's why it's like, okay, and if somebody's ready to hear a message they'll want to hear from their loved one.
What's the name of the book?
Diary of a Spirit Medium.
Okay. When was it published?
It was published in 2010.
Okay.
And it's,
And you're coming out with a second?
the second one's in the writing process right now, so I'm coming out with the second one. Hopefully by next year it'll be all, you know, put together and ready to go to
Will
be
that
published.
be about more experiences?
It's more a little bit of a different book than this one. It's, you know, about spirit children and teenagers, so that's what I'm writing about in this one. And it's almost together, it's just getting it all together and typed up. And
Okay. That's great. Thanks so much, Karen.
thank you, Joe.